April 22, 2024 was the day Inter Milan celebrated their 20th Scudetto. While the roaring crowd of fans was out celebrating their triumph, the owner's office was greeted by panic and chaos. Just 1 month later, the Serie A champion will be taken over by an American investment fund due to that. In early June of the same year, a man who turned Juventus into a top club and ensured their dominance for over 10 years would take office. The man who would later break the old lady's hegemony and build two champion teams in Milan. Through his actions, he would prevent Nerazzuri from going bankrupt. His name is Guiseppe Marotta. I will tell you how Beppe assembled the winning team in Turin, mastered the art of signing free agents and reselling them for tens of millions, the secrets behind Inter's Scudetto, and what happened to Inter after they were sold for that. A brilliant manager, but an average footballer. Giuseppe started his football career as a ball boy and later as a warehouse man for his hometown club Perez. Realizing early on that he wouldn't become a big player, Marotta decided to try his hand at being a football manager. At 19, Beppe got a job in the youth department of the same club and 1 year later was promoted to general manager. In his first season in charge, Marotta saw the team promoted back to Serie B and made his first big deal, lured Michelangelo Rampula, who would later become a star player at Juventus. Beppe visited the most remote places in Italy looking for diamonds in the rough. He didn't stay long in Paris and moved to Monza, then to Como, Ravenna and Venice. Under Marotta as general manager, Venice achieved a historic promotion back to Serie A in 1998, marking the club's first return to the top flight in more than 30 years. Marotta's knack for finding talent was majestic. Moving to Sampdoria in 2002, Beppe revamped a strong attacking squad that returned to the elite in the first season after 4 disastrous years in Serie B and a year later reached the UEFA Cup. All these successes in 2007 allowed Marotta to land his first big name, Antonio Cassano, on a loan move from Real Madrid. The Italian striker was famous for his skills on the pitch, but infamous for his behavior off it. He insulted referees, didn't give a fuck about discipline, and even labeled Fabio Capello a piece of shit. Although Cassano's talent was limitless, Los Blancos wanted to quickly get rid of their uncontrolled player. Giuseppe Marotta quickly negotiated a loan deal with a buyout option a year later for $5.5 million. Sampdoria didn't pay a dime for the loan because Antonio threatened to walk all the way back to Rome if the Spanish club did not let him go. Back in Italy, Cassano started to look like his old self again, scoring 10 goals in 22 Serie A matches and forming a deadly partnership with Gianpaolo Pazzini. When the end of the season was getting closer and closer, so was the moment of the player's buyout. Yet Beppe was in no hurry to send a hefty sum to Madrid, as he knew perfectly well Cassano would surely do something crazy. In March 2008, the striker received a 5-game ban for an on-pitch meltdown against Torino. Having been shown a red card by referee Nicola Pierpaoli, Cassano lost his head, taking his shirt off and throwing it at the official. After seemingly bursting into tears on the sideline, Cassano was then seen standing in the tunnel, warning Pierpaoli that he'd be waiting for him after the match. The very next day, Marotta called the Real Madrid office saying, "He's crazy, when are you taking him back?" As a result, Madrid had to give up the compensation for Antonio's transfer, and the Genoese club got the prolific striker for free. In just 3 years back in Italy, the rebel player, along with Gianpaolo Pazzini, would score nearly 90 goals between them, forever entering the club's history. Later in his autobiography, Antonio would say, "Marotta is a damn genius. He's the Cassano of football general managers." The Beppe himself would call this transfer one of the 3 best in his career. The Juventus Era. Juventus had lots of problems in the late 2000s. Following the Calciopoli scandal and relegation to Serie B, the Italian giant could not find their way for several seasons. In the 4 years before the arrival of Agnelli and Marotta, the club changed 6 coaches, did not sign a single top player, and in May 2010 finished the campaign in 7th place in Serie A, their worst since the promotion. Just so you understand, the old lady had to rely on the agent Del Piero, Diego Trezeguet Cannavaro, and a €25 million Felipe Melo, who was quickly awarded the Bidone d'Oro, the prize for being the worst top footballer in Serie A. To make it back to the top, Juventus desperately needed fresh blood, both on the field and in management. Newly elected Andrea Agnelli appointed Marotta as a general manager, and the two got to work. Beppe spent the first year in charge of transfer operations, making wholesale changes to the squad, acquiring 14 new players while offloading 12, including Trezeguet, Diego, and Cannavaro. You don't always get everything right on the first try, and this was the case with Juve. They finished the 10-11 season 7th in Serie A, missed out again on the Champions League football, and failed to advance past the group stage of the 10-11 Europa League. The first big names on the transfer list did not live up to expectations as well. 50 million euros Milos Krasic and 12 million euros Jorge Martinez both failed to deliver. But Marotta believed that in football, 10% of deals are bound to fail, and he proved to be right. It was the same year when the legendary BBC trio of Barzagli, Bonucci, and Chiellini was formed, which was the foundation of Juve's future victories. Besides, Barzagli joined from Wolfsburg for a mere 300,000 and locked down the center-back position for years to come. It is on this trio of players that the little-known coach Antonio Conte bet in the following season. Antonio was actually yet another brilliant Marotta's signing. The Italian arrived at a team that had not won anything in 8 years, was humiliated by a corruption scandal, and had no faith in themselves. We hit rock bottom. We played in Serie B and finished 7th for 2 successive seasons. Then Conte arrived and touched the team's soul. He was like, "Is this who you really are? This is Juventus. We must return to speed blood on the pitch. We must return where we belong," said the legend of the touring club, Claudio Marchisio. Indeed, in the very first season under Conte, the team turned into a winning machine, and the black streak in Juventus history finally gave way to the white, just like on their kit. By covering up the weaknesses of his players and emphasizing their strengths, a brilliant first pass from Bonucci, the steely character of Chiellini, and the positioning and tackling skills of Barzagli, Antonio restored the well-known rock-solid defense Juve once had. The team went unbeaten for the entire 11-12 campaign, conceding only 20 goals. The golden era of Juventus began exactly from this Marotta's appointment, the glorious 9 years, including 9 Scudettos, 5 Coppa Italia, 5 Super Cups of Italy, and 2 memorable Champions League finals. But wait, how did Marotta make Juventus great again? Here's the answer. Beppe appointed a ruthless, mentally tough coach, balanced the payroll, made wholesale changes to the squad, and then, using mostly free agents and hidden talents, assembled a team hungry for future victories. Giuseppe Marotta had 2 mottos: minimize spending and maximize efficiency. Evolution instead of revolution. Beppe's greatest deals. Despite the long-awaited Scudetto, Juventus' finances were still bad. Even with the debt shrinking every year, the club didn't have the funds to buy established stars, because the construction of the new stadium and the financial obligations of the previous management were getting in the way. It was decided to build a new team around Andrea Pirlo, who had less and less influence at AC Milan and was at loggerheads with the club's bosses. Marotta was watching and rubbing his hands. At the time, AC Milan had a rule: players over 30 and past their prime were only offered 1-year contracts. Little wonder Pirlo had no interest in continuing at the club. The final straw was the gift he received from the bosses, a blue ink pen for 10 years of sweating blood for the club. It was the exact moment Marotta called Andrea and explained what kind of bet they were willing to make on Pirlo in touring. The player said goodbye to the former team, left for Juve as a free agent, and completed the signing of the century, according to Buffon. Ultimately, the great midfielder would spend 4 brilliant seasons at the new club, winning 4 Scudettos and being named the Serie A Footballer of the Year 3 times. Aging players, presumably on the decline, or free agents would form the core of Juventus' transfer policy for years. The same path would later be taken by Dani Alves, Sami Khedira, Fernando Llorente, Emre Can, Lucio, Kingsley Coman, and others. Even when Juve had to spend money, they did it wisely. 12 million for Arturo Vidal, 9 million for Carlos Tevez, and 1.5 for Patrice Evra. Marotta made it clear: the equation that whoever spends the most wins is not true. The Italian job. The biggest deal Beppe landed was Paul Pogba. His move as a free agent and then 4 seasons later being sold back to United for 105 million is possibly the biggest heist in football history. But let's take it step by step. Fast, resilient and young, Paul was the star of the Man United Academy. Michael Owen, Patrice Evra and Michael Carrick all highlighted the unique physical attributes and the mature play of the midfielder. Sir Alex Ferguson gradually integrated the player into the first team. However, Pogba wanted more trust from the coach, more playing time, and most importantly, more money. It's impossible to turn a blind eye to the influence of Mino Raiola had on the player. He broke off negotiations on Paul's extension with Man United, telling the coach that even his dog wouldn't sign it. Sir Alex took offense and allegedly called Raiola a twat. That's when Giuseppe stepped in with a 4-year deal, promising a place in the starting 11 for the 19-year-old and of course, a fat commission for the agent. Paul would enjoy 4 brilliant years in Italy with 74 goal contributions, the Golden Boy Award in 2013 and the Ballon d'Or nomination a year later. Signing Pogba as a free agent was a brilliant deal, but his sale back to Manchester was even more genius. During the negotiations, Giuseppe used the interest of other big clubs to press for more money and bleed the Red Devils dry. The manager emphasized the midfielder's importance to Juventus and wouldn't budge unless a hefty sum was offered. As a result, United paid a crazy 105 million euros, with the market value being around 70. The Pogba transfer shattered the psychological barrier, becoming the most expensive in football history at the time. Leaving Juventus, a new chapter. In 2018, during his 7th season at Juventus, Marotta realized the urge for a new challenge. Moreover, the appetites of the club president Andrea Agnelli were steadily growing. The president was tired of being the domestic juggernaut only. Stung by repetitive exits from the Champions League, Agnelli spared no expense on transfers, even sending the club into debt. 40 million for Dybala, another 40 for Bernardeschi and 90 for Higuain. The tipping point of this Champions League madness was the signing of Cristiano Ronaldo for an unbelievable 117 million. The future of the club was sacrificed for the sake of short-term hype and the desired trophy. Marotta tried hard for a long time to talk Agnelli out of it, explaining the downsides of the deal. Juventus revenues were nowhere near close to Real Madrid's income, and another expensive purchase could severely impact the old lady's budget. Although Ronaldo helped boost brand recognition at the moment, the long-term cost of his signing proved to be more significant. 3 months into Ronaldo's deal, Beppe terminated his contract as Juventus CEO after 8 years at the club. A new challenge didn't take long to arrive. Just a month and a half later, Beppe was offered the position of chairman at Inter. In December 2018, Marotta joined a team very similar to Juventus in 2009. 8 years without trophies, the same identity crisis, unstable locker room, and massive debts. Their financial troubles began long before, during the glorious 18 years of Massimo Moratti's presidency, when Nerazzuri won every possible trophy in Italy and Europe. The eccentric oil tycoon brought in stars by the dozen to Milan, which resulted in the club accumulating losses of over 1 billion euros. A new owner, Indonesian businessman Erick Thohir, brought the payroll to a more or less acceptable level, but continued to waste the budget on average players. He quickly lost interest in the club and incurred losses of 140 million during the 14-15 season. In 2016, Chinese businessmen led by Steven Zhang took over Inter, with subsidies from the Chinese government. The new owners initially covered some of the Nerazzuri's debts. However, the pandemic and the new plan for developing Chinese football led to the club's deficits soaring to a staggering 800 million. Giuseppe once again had to reassemble a strong team with limited resources. But first, to pull the team out of its steep decline, he needed to restore discipline in the locker room and clean up the roster of scandalous stars. Inter always had a dressing room full of eccentrics. It was somewhat of a trademark, like the special DNA of Barcelona or Real Madrid's magic in the Champions League. Ronaldo Nazario had the rift with Hector Cooper. Adriano spent more time in Milan's nightclubs in his final years with the team than on the pitch. Cassano fought with the coach during training, and Icardi was at war with fans and teammates. And here's what Beppe Marotta did. He sold the team's leading goalscorer to PSG, fired Spalletti, who lost control of the locker room, sent Perez on loan, and got rid of Nainggolan. Then, just like he did at Juve, he brought in Conte. The coach was asked to make the team great again, and his salary made it clear to the players that the project was built around Antonio, not them. Alongside Conte, Beppe appointed the club legend Gabriele Oriali as the sporting director and brought in the Italian fitness coach Antonio Pintus, thanks to whom the team was able to sustain elite intensity the entire season. But Marotta's main forte is, of course, transfers. For a reasonable price, he found ambitious and football-wise players who were ready to sweat blood for the club. Nicola Barella from Cagliari for 32 million, Denzel Dumfries for 14.5 from PSV, Hendrik Mkhitaryan and Hakan Çalhanoğlu both came as free agents. Marotta also didn't pay a dime for Marcus Thuram, who formed a deadly duo with Lautaro Martinez. When it became clear Handanovic could no longer sustain great performances, Beppe found him a replacement in the face of Andrea Onana, who would become the best goalkeeper in the 22-23 Champions League by clean sheets, saves and expected goals. After parting ways with the Cameroonian, the club signed Jan Zomer from Bayern Munich for 6 million, who would later be rated among the best goalkeepers in Europe. At Inter, Marotta keeps showing his best, spending less than 70 million for 4 years in a row to build the champion team. For comparison, Chelsea spent roughly the same amount on Enzo, Modric and Fofana in just one transfer window as Beppe did in 4. Besides, Marotta sold Lukaku to the London club for 113 million and less than 12 months later brought him back on loan for 7. Following the 2021 season, the Nerazzuri were in the red due to the consequences of the pandemic and were forced to let go of their leaders again. With Lukaku and Hakimi gone, Conte left the team as well. It seemed dark times awaited the team, yet the appointment of Simone Inzaghi was the solution to all the problems. The Italian didn't dismantle Antonio's work, he simply improved upon it. Throughout the season, the Nerazzurri showcased the best football in Italy but missed out on the gold medals only because Inzaghi couldn't convert the quality of play into victories. The fruits of Simone's labor would come later. Starting with 2 Coppa Italia and 3 Super Cups of Italy, then a Champions League final in June 2023, and just a year later gold medals in Serie A. The club, known for intrigues and scandals just 5 years ago, is now steadily restoring its greatness. Notably, even against the backdrop of the club's sale due to debts, Inter had a smooth 23-24 campaign. Under Marotta's leadership, Inter's losses have decreased year by year. This was influenced by a sound transfer policy, a reduction in salary caps within the team, 2 Scudettos, and prize money from the Champions League final. The subtotal of Marotta's work, apart from trophies, is the first financial year in a long time that finished with a profit. Ending. Giuseppe Marotta has established himself as a class manager for crisis-hit clubs, capable of building a successful long-term project with limited funds. In the last 13 years, the team he has assembled have won Serie A 9 times and stopped just one step away from winning the Champions League thrice. Unlike the Tuchele's crisis-ridden Nerazzurri, Inter today is a well-structured club with a clear management system and a game that brings trophies. Inzaghi's team has been showing the best football in Italy for the last 3 seasons, and according to analysts from Opta, they are currently one of the 3 strongest clubs in the world. Although Inter is still haunted by financial difficulties, Marotta continues to follow his path, keeping old leaders and acquiring new ones. Over the summer of 2024, the club extended Lautaro Martinez and Inzaghi and signed Piotr Zielinski and Mehdi Taremi. While the Scudetto competitors are in full-blown reconstruction mode, Inter has a great chance not only to defend their title, but also to advance as far as possible in the Champions League. Will Marotta be able to lead the Nerazzurri to the Champions League victory in the coming years? Or will he remain a class specialist only within Italy? Share your opinion in the comments down below. It was a pleasure. See you soon. Know the ball.